This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law. I'm investigative journalist Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hey y'all, I'm Molly.
Hi, I'm Pam.
And welcome to the Gulf Coast Confidential podcast. If you haven't already, we would love it if you would please like and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment about this case or any other episodes that you may have checked out. Today's episode, y'all, it's a super sad series of cases, but we're calling this Suicide Under Threat. Who's killing teenage boys online? And before we dive into it, I just want to let you know, in case this is a trigger for you, or if you've had thoughts of suicide or a loved one that has committed suicide, we just want to let you know that help is always available. 988 is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Somebody is available 24/7 in the United States, in English as well as Spanish. So we just want to let you know that's a resource for folks too. But this is serious. There's a lot of cases that have made headlines recently, especially of teenage boys who have killed themselves under threat of sextortion with real images, with fake images. And it's not just teenage boys, it's also young men. They're also being targeted. And we just want to highlight some of these cases to raise awareness because it is such a sad and serious thing that's happening right now.
Right. Well, I mean, you can't look on Facebook or Instagram without seeing this. And it's like one, then another. And they are the young men that are popular, that play football, basketball, the one that as they say, lights up the room, the one that's fun and jokes and stuff like that. And so it makes you wonder what is going on. But I think when they're alone in their rooms or have their computer time, everybody likes to be accepted and noticed and feel good and stuff. So we've got these predators. These are predators. This is what is growing. A whole lot of these boys are not, and it happens to girls too, but a whole lot of these boys, the parents are saying, I let the dark web in my house.
Well, and that's what I wanted to build on because, growing up in the eras that you and I grew up in, before the internet, before computers were such an everyday part of our lives, we're in our pockets, essentially right here in our hand, then it was the stranger danger. It was beware of the white van. Yeah. It was look out for somebody nabbing your kid, taking them from the mall if you got away from your mom or whatever the case may be. It was somebody who had a faceless person, if you will, that was just a stranger that could come up and ruin your life, take you away, kidnap you, kill you, whatever the case may be. That was the danger, afraid of letting your kids out of your sight. But now they can leave your sight by the internet, essentially. And I want to share this quote from Shannon Heacock. She's the mother of Elijah Heacock, one of the cases that we're going to talk about, another sad ending for that young man. But she said, quote, "It's no longer to be scared of the white van that drives around. You have to be scared of the internet," end quote. So that's exactly what we've got. And like you mentioned, a whole array of predators. People who are coming after these young people for specific reasons. Sometimes it's financial gain. We're going to talk about a case where the suspects are out of Nigeria. Sometimes it is just sadistic enjoyment of watching other people suffer. We're going to talk about another case where a young man in Germany is now facing arrest in that country because they have laws that enable authorities to go after them because he basically tormented and bullied and encouraged a young man to kill himself who followed through with it. So there are a number of different predators that are out there, from sextortion to financial gain to just wanting to see people hurt themselves for the sake of the power. There's a lot to be careful of. And so we want to highlight some of these cases that are bringing these issues to light, beginning with Elijah Heacock. He was that teen who, like Pam was saying, he was described as vibrant, made people smile, wasn't depressed, wasn't sad. And this is coming from his dad and what he has told other media as well. So that's why it was such a shock when this young man, when he got a threatening text with an AI-generated nude photo of himself, not even one that he sent himself, but they wanted $3,000 in order to keep it from being sent to his friends and family. And then he died shortly after receiving that message. So basically his parents went to bed thinking everything was normal, everything was fine. And then they woke woke up to their daughter who had found his body going, he's hurt. And not only was he hurt, he was gone.
Yeah. And there were 150 of those threatening messages, like in 20 minutes.
Unbelievable.
And this happened in February of this year. So, and this is Kentucky. And like they said, this little boy was like a tornado, and their dad jokes and stuff. Now, Kentucky is taking in legislative action to make this a felony, sextortion a felony. Good. Because they say we're going to hang on to the tail end of take it down. Okay, remember we've got take it down in effect, because that's a federal thing. And I think making this a federal offense to where there are huge penalties for this is what's going to, it won't stop it, but it will help.
Well, and it would basically supersede in some cases state laws, because that's such a patchwork of laws that address some of these things. And we have cases right here in Florida that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this podcast. But yeah, the federal laws enable them to really be able to, authorities to go after these people, you know, because we don't really have a good network. Every state has different laws about it. So the more that they can address it federally, I think that gives them some real teeth to be able to go after these people. Right. But yeah, we were talking a little bit about Elijah.
Yeah, and you get to thinking about, well, what's, you know, you get to thinking, what is someone thinking those few seconds of unreasonable thinking or panic thinking or whatever? These people come at these boys or young people fierce. They're like teams of 2 and 3 sometimes. They look up everything and go, oh yeah, I know Molly, and I know da-da-da-da, and I go to this church, and et cetera. So they create a familiarity with them. And they say, oh, that's somebody at my school or in my neighborhood. But they get to them the second, and they'll send them a sexy shot. You know, because they try
pretending to be some young girl or somebody that they would find attractive, their target.
It starts with small talk, then some chit chat, then some flirtiness, then some, you know, explicit type of stuff. And they send their pic and they say, pic for pic, however they do, you know. And so the second that pic gets sent, the extortion, the pressure, where they do the humiliation and the fear and the power and the control. Because we have to remember, too, these are some sick MFers. You know, they are very
evil.
Sick. Yeah. They don't mind killing somebody over it. They even, as we'll find out later, think it's fun to watch this stuff. And they've kind of make excuses for them somewhere in here, because a lot of these are from that Nigerian print stuff back when in 2000 when we had to watch our emails, because they're called the Yahoo boys.
Yes.
Because it was the Yahoo emails. So this is nothing new. It's just aggressive now. So they get them so messed up within minutes. Message after message after message. And then all of a sudden, they panic. This boy, Elijah's, like you said, his twin sister found him.
That's so
unreal.
Sad.
But now the FBI, they got involved in it, and they found out one suspect was from Texas and one from Nigeria. And this made me so mad when I read this. They said, well, the boy from Texas said he's sorry, he won't do it again. I'm like, I'll be damned. Elijah's dead. I don't care what you will do or not do.
Sorry's a little late.
Yeah.
Too little, too late.
Yeah. So basically, he's like, I don't want to go to prison. I'm like, well, that's exactly where you need to go.
Well, and it is such a big problem. In doing a little bit of research, they found that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children said it got more than 500,000 reports of sextortion. And these are just scams alone targeting minors in just the last year. 20 young people have taken their lives because of sextortion scams since 2021, and that's according to the FBI. Those are estimates, and that's just what we know about.
Oh, yeah. That's 20 too many.
Yes.
Yeah. And what happens, too, is that sometimes they get a certain place, and some kids do, like, take that exit. You know, they'll go run and tell their parents.
Thank goodness.
Yes, definitely. Because when I post about it online, just on my personal Facebook, I will have at least 3 or 4 people go, that happened to my son. That happened to my, and some of them, the son did not survive. The lady put something like this, like 30 minutes, $50, my son's dead. And I just went, I am so sorry, you know, because it was exactly what we were talking about here. But sometimes there are some filters that you can put on here, like that nanny gate or nanny cam or something like that, because Roblox and Discord, those websites are the ones that bring that dark web into your house.
They're playing games on there. They're interacting with different people on there. These are strangers that are pretending to be, like you said, kids their own age, and teen boys are being targeted specifically for that reason, because those are the ones that are on there gaming. They know their psychology. They know how to basically manipulate and take advantage of their vulnerabilities, whether it's sexuality or just fear of being exposed for something they didn't even do. They just don't have the life experience to handle the pressure and the manipulation, the bullying, the online assault of threats that they're facing. Anyway, it just hurts my heart that
this was
happening
AI.
at night.
AI. He didn't do he didn't even send a picture. So this shows you that they just find somebody. And what I think about is that after the pandemic, we had those couple of years where everybody was lonely and figuring out what to do and away from other people and stuff. And a lot of these kids, that's part of their high school, years there. So they took advantage of that too. But can you imagine if you, me, and James all sat down and we decide we have a victim, and I say, well, you talk to them and you send them stuff. I'll do the research and James will do the pressure, and we'll look up this other stuff, and we just keep on and on and on. It is what they do.
It's diabolical. It's methodical. It's planned, and the damage and the consequences are real. And it's so heartbreaking because some of these parents don't even know what's happening until they find the messages on the phone, and they didn't realize with Elijah that he had been sextorted with an image that wasn't even his. But the police, when they started going through his phone, they found the messages and realized that he was the victim of a sextortion scam. And for those who aren't familiar, that's basically where bad actors target young people online and threaten to release explicit images of them. Like we talked about, some are AI generated, some are ones they actually send. And then they ask for money or they coerce them into performing harmful acts. That's where some of the sadism comes in. Fortunately, that's not Elijah, as far as we know, didn't endure that. Not that what he endured wasn't horrible enough. It certainly was. But, so many parents are getting blindsided by this. They didn't even hear about this until it's too late. Again, it just breaks my heart that this young man's twin sister found him and they don't, they had no idea. They went to bed thinking everything was fine. And that's what one of his parents said, his father. He said, quote, "The people that are after our children are well organized. They are well financed and they are relentless. They don't need the photos to be real. They can generate whatever they want and then they use it to blackmail the child," end quote. So we just want to share this because these parents are trying to sound the alarm so that other parents, and even if you're not a parent, maybe you just are concerned or know someone, maybe you're a foster parent, maybe you have nieces or nephews, but it's just something to be aware. Maybe you're a teacher. These kids are under so much pressure that we may not even realize as adults.
Right. A lot of people are recommending that we teach this in the schools, a class on sextortion, and give them a list of what to do, sort of like a phone tree, like do this first. Like, first of all, turn your computer off, go get your parents. Because what we have to let kids know, there is nothing on this earth that is worth taking your life over.
Amen.
And a picture, sure isn't it? Because a picture doesn't even have to be real. We see that the more we get into these that have AI. This was AI.
I know.
And he even felt like I have to protect myself. And see, that's what I get so mad about is when somebody over there decides that today I'm going to make this person's life miserable.
Well, and they could tell by the phone records that basically the people that he was in contact with were talking to him right up until minutes before his death, and that he did try to send money. And the response was, that's not enough. And then he basically just lost hope and gave up.
It's never enough for them.
I know. And they just don't, again, like you said, they're organized. They know what they're doing. They're targeting these kids. It's almost like, holding up a trash can lid against a fire hose. They're not prepared for it.
Yeah, they're just not ready. Their minds aren't ready for it.
And neither was little Jay Taylor. And that's another case that I think Pam and I wanted to talk about. This is a 13-year-old Jay. If you're not familiar, his parents have been trying to get justice for their son since 2022 when he allegedly was pushed, I should say, into suicide. But y'all, he killed himself online. He streamed it live on social media. Basically the result of being tormented online by a network of extremists known as 764. And I want to share a quote from Colby Taylor, his father, who said, quote unquote, "It's almost biblical in its definition of evil, what happened," end quote. And so going back to what Pam and I talked about before, we have laws that are still trying to catch up with technology in this country. Some people think we do have the laws to pursue, but that there's reasons maybe for potential financial gain or just the pitfalls of capitalism, if you will, and not trying to hold some of these companies accountable. But there are different laws. The United States did not particularly, even though Jay Taylor killed himself in this country, Apparently, there's some that believe that we just don't have the laws that enable the United States to go after a foreign bad actor, because that's what we have in this case. It was a young man who is a medical student in Germany of, I think, German-Iranian descent, and he was part of this group. And once again, much like poor Elijah, the family of Jay Taylor, he had struggles before with different types of PTSD. I think he had struggles with depression. He had been a cutter, if you will, but he had been getting better. His parents had been getting him help, but he got online and basically, and we'll talk about the details in just a second, but he killed himself, and he did it live, but he did it under duress. He did it under being pressured and encouraged to take his own life. He didn't start off in this conversation depressed and ready to do it. He started off saying, I want to live, I want to be okay. And just like Elijah, his parents woke up, and next thing you know, he's dead in a parking lot. And the only reason they even knew what happened is because a young woman around his age in Australia, another teenager, happened to be online with the same people with a call sign called White Tiger. That's the guy that ends up getting arrested in Germany, because Germany has laws that enable them to arrest him. Basically, she said, hey, I saw them bragging on another website, all these people that got together and basically tag teamed this kid and tormented him and encouraged him and pushed him into killing himself.
He walks out of his own house because his parents had put where he was just to get an hour of computer time a day. Well, unbeknownst to them, that reset itself at midnight. So he was, he got 2 hours.
There was another hour.
Yeah. And so these 764 folks, White Tiger guy, and German.
20-year-old medical student, they say.
And they say this is devil stuff.
Yes.
You know, I don't want to give that too much credence because I don't believe in speaking out the devil, speak Jesus, the blood of Jesus. But this is very, very
serious,
wicked.
And dark.
Yeah, definitely. And so he walks to the supermarket. And then he props his phone up there so they all can watch it. And then they encourage him. And they watch him strangle himself. Just watch and cheer him on and this, that, and the other. And that's how they found his phone propped up, the place behind the grocery store. You know, they bullied him all the way into that. He had, like I said, he had got a little more time on the computer. And what Jay had put on there is, I'm lonely. I'm looking for LGBTQ friends and folks that like to crochet too. So that was the things. So they probably looked at that and said, oh, here's somebody we can abuse and run down.
Emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
so some
hurting.
of this is not only money, it's perversion and it's devilness and it's sadistic.
It's sick.
But they do sell these tapes of these like live suicides.
This is like Faces of Death from way back in the day when we had videos. That's horrible. But yeah, his parents are now wanting to raise awareness, and they're coming forward. For the longest time, no one who knew the identity of this young man or his family, but now his parents are coming forward because they want the public to know about 764, which authorities say is like a loosely knit network of online predators. These parents want more protection from the law against these online platforms. They're asking Congress to act. They want something to happen, somebody to pay for what happened to their child, and who can blame them? You know, and so supposedly that there are efforts in Congress to try to take a look at this. Some of these other websites, like Pam mentioned Roblox earlier, Discord, these companies say that they are working to make changes that identify these online predators and maybe stop them before they get started. But these parents are saying, yeah, it's too little too late. You're not doing enough right now because they're still active. They're actively looking. And it reminds me a lot of when the internet first came online. And I was covering crime reporting for the local television station. And every single day, you know, I get some call from the local sex crimes investigator. And he would say, yeah, Molly, it's as easy as just getting on there in some of these chat rooms and just saying, pretending to be a 13-year-old girl and then just watching them flock to you. So I get that there's lapses in keeping up with technology and changes and keeping up with the law. But I also think there's some common sense, practical things that can be done too. If somebody is encouraging someone to kill themselves, I mean, we saw it with the Conrad Roy case. You know, that young man basically was pressured by a pseudo girlfriend, if you will, into killing himself. himself. So he was in a truck. He let the exhaust poison him. But at one point he got out and he was ready to not kill himself. And she was like, don't be a wuss. Get back in there and finish what you started. And he did. And that's why this young woman was found, according to the judge, like guilty of negligent manslaughter. Because he had broken the cycle, if you will, of wanting to kill himself. And then she reignited it. She encouraged him to keep it going and sent him right back into that truck.
Oh, yeah.
So there are laws that can be used to prosecute these people. But I guess when there's international issues involved, that's why they let Germany take the lead, because they do have laws that will hold this young man accountable.
Definitely.
But, again, I only go down that road because I think it's important, if people do care, write your congressman, reach out to your legislators, say something needs to change. We need better protections for our kids because they all are online, one way or the other. No matter how much we may try to limit them. Poor Jay's parents tried to limit him to an hour. We can only do so much as parents. I don't know about you, but technology is a bit of eludes me on more than one occasion. I think I've got something down, and then sure enough, I don't. Well, these predators do have it down.
Oh, yeah.
They do know where the wormholes are. They do know how to get around these safety protections and these precautions. So if the laws aren't in place to hold them accountable, then it is like a Wild West environment out there online, and there's only so much parents can do besides just lock their kids in a basement and never let them have a phone or get on the computer.
Well, and then us knowing about it helps. But like that 764, you'll see pictures of like where they'll have a doll like this and it's got 764 written across it.
Yeah.
And we saw this weirdo bullshit,
with Aubrey Wyatt,
with that, where they were using dolls to kind of scare her with blood all over them and stuff. And then, there's one FBI agent. And, I brought this stick because I'm thinking about this. This has almost done this to me, too. This FBI agent, he tried to get the things done. He saw that. The Australian girl sent the video to Jay's dad. And because he wanted to see.
I would want to know. God, love him.
Went in the bathroom and watched it himself.
Oh, bless his heart.
And so this is what he knows. And like you said, these people don't even know this was happening till the police tell them or until they look at the messages. But one FBI agent, he said, this broke me. An FBI agent. A seasoned FBI agent, because there is so much more bizarre stuff.
It's cruel. I mean, here you have a young person that's already struggling with their identity, their sexual identity, where they stand in this world, hurting, lonely, looking for friends, just wanting to crochet, just wanting to find connection with other people, and instead walks right in. It makes me think of that scripture, the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour, and that's exactly what these people are. But I would love to see somebody put those lines in their place.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this 764 comes from this guy, this boy in Texas. It was part of his zip code. And I think that he's since been caught. So, they got the swastikas and stuff on things and all this. And there is something for Jay's Law trying to come into effect. But you know what always makes me so mad during these things is that these people do these horrible things, take someone's life, and giggle and laugh about it. Now, I'm going to change lanes here for a minute. Same thing happened in the locker room up there at Tuscumbia, Alabama. Same thing going to happen, some things we're going to talk about next week with grown men in the fire station. These are people like you and I that we assume they have good sense and they're not some sort of effing weirdo. But these people are walking around giggling and laughing. When I was doing my victim impact statement, when my nephew was laughing at me, there's just something about that lights me up. And I don't understand how judges and people let that be acceptable. Because now the families are victimized over and over and over again. And you're laughing at them.
I know, it's sick. It's hard to wrap your mind around something like that. And I'd been hearing about that for some time too, with just the dark web, that in third world countries and places where there's a lot of poverty, that they were targeting vulnerable families and basically paying them to let them do weird and terrible things live to their children, to young people, or to anyone really, individuals. But they would stand there, they would have them hurt themselves or have other people hurt them live and in real time, paying in currency. And that was the other part that you and I talked about to mention, because there is a financial benefit to a lot of this. The sextortion, whether they're trying to get them to send money in order to keep fake or real images from being shared with family and friends, or maybe they're just getting off on watching somebody hurt themselves. It becomes like even a betting situation within these sick groups. They're like, oh, well, you win points, which can essentially, translate into money. And that's online currency. That's basically obviously, cryptocurrency is what they're using.
And I don't understand all that. But the thing is, I do know that all that's wrong and money changes. And with the, what they have to do is they have to have somebody over here. They got to have somebody. So we got this boy in Texas that was doing this with this group.
He partnered with the 764 people, the 20-year-old medical student in Germany.
Part of it. So this boy, but also because they can launder the money over here. They launder it, they take 20% for themselves, then they send the other Bitcoin or currency to the other countries.
That's disgusting.
It is.
It's sick. And I think that's what is commonly known. That's why his parents wanted so much for people to understand what was happening. This guy calling himself White Tiger online and then directing others to push and manipulate poor Jay, according to his parents. And that the other part that broke my heart, and I can see why it certainly broke that FBI agent.
Yeah.
But that Jay kept telling them online he didn't want to die, that he was feeling good, that he was looking forward to upcoming plans with his family, but they just wouldn't stop. And that was the heartbreaking part. This is a quote from his dad. He said, quote, "You could see they were typing and watching and encouraging and even purposely misgendering Jay. All the things you could think of to trigger someone in Jay's life," his dad said, end quote. So one of them even said, "Oh, I'll take my life too. You do it." Like, it's just so horrible. Yeah. Like, there's no way to even, and of course they didn't.
Yeah, of course not.
But how would Jay know that anyway,
14, or 13, 14. And I mean, 15, 16 is a little more mature, but not that much more. But you were just a teenager last year.
Yeah. Well, I think it's wonderful that the FBI worked so hard because apparently it was like months and months of really painstaking work. And they uncovered this White Tiger. They uncovered who his partners are. They feel like they know the real identity of this kid. Like I said earlier, a medical student from Hamburg, Germany. The name has not been released due to privacy things. But basically, this guy referred to himself as an e-girl groomer, targeting young girls who, quote unquote, just wanted love, convincing them to mutilate themselves, coaxing them and finding people to manipulate them even more. So basically the very definition of a horrible human being.
Definitely terrible. And this grooming takes nanoseconds. Doesn't take long.
God, and that's what's so scary. It just hurts my heart for these kids. It's just like lambs to the slaughter. They don't know what they're getting themselves into.
And they get embarrassed. That's what's it. Like, I'm not a parent, but I've had one. Okay, had two. But just basically being able to go to your parent and go, "Hey, I messed up," or "This is embarrassing," or whatever. Your parents love you more than anything. A picture shouldn't equal suicide, or a picture shouldn't equal your death. There's absolutely, I keep going back, absolutely nothing that you can't tell us.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I thought it was interesting too, when they did end up charging this guy back in June, White Tiger, he was charged with murder and then more than 200 other counts for abuse of other alleged victims. So it wasn't just him. He's pleaded not guilty, of course, and he denies all the charges. But, I think partially what has these parents so upset is that, these kids are on these online platforms like Discord and Roblox, and other kids are still on there, and they just want parents to be aware, hey, it happened to us, it can happen to you.
Right. When I think also with Jay, they wanted that done on Instagram. So a lot of these parents are going, you know what? I'm coming for that social platform, because they will I'll type something in that's like the football players up in Tuscumbia did, and they're like, you violated. I'm like, that is a normal sentence. But this right here, you let this 10, 20 minutes of an active suicide go on?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, I think that's why these parents are calling for basically an army of moderators to get in there and watch and see what's going on and report it and take action, because otherwise these kids, again, are just being left.
Right.
There's no protection for them.
Right. 20 minutes of it. So I mean that is basically negligence or big trouble.
Right. Or an easier way online to be able to report this stuff, as opposed to being, I see something creepy, and then you got to work to find out who you reach out to, and then you got to email them, and then you got to wait for a response, and it's tough. I mean, if it's not an easy process. I think that's what some of these parents are calling for too, that they need to have a more user-friendly, immediate way to report. Like a red button, if you will.
Exactly. I can't remember which mom said that, but she was like,
Just
one thing. That's suspicious.
Yes, I believe that's Jay's mom who said that. But yeah, so, and I thought it was interesting too, in an ABC News report, Discord told them that they are quote unquote committed to user safety and that quote unquote horrific actions of groups like this have no place on Discord or anywhere in society. So end quote. That's all well and good, but these parents are like, okay, well, put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, definitely.
Make some changes.
Yeah. This is the most precious thing in the world to me, my child.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, these parents want Discord and these other online platforms to put their money where their mouth is and start doing more regulation and keeping a moderate army, if you will, an army of moderators to see what's going on. They don't believe that they're doing all they can do, but that's why they're pushing for what's called Jay's Law. And they hope that this public will push for this too so that Congress can do more. But basically, they hope lawmakers will pass this law that would explicitly make it a federal crime to solicit someone online to kill themselves. And that would allow the United States to charge White Tiger in a case like this. And it seems like a no-brainer. It seems like that should already be on there. It seems like, well, you directly pushed so-and-so to kill themselves, and they did, and you used psychological manipulation and basically bullying and whatever else to convince this kid to do something. You'd think that would already be on the books. But the United States is like, no, we haven't really addressed that directly.
Right.
But that's what Jay's Law would do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you would think we don't have to tell people this stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, I agree. So it's not clear if this guy's going to get charged in the United States, but at least he's being charged in Germany, and we'll continue to watch this case and see what happens. But speaking of laws, we are very appreciative of Zarzar Law for being a supporter of Gulf Coast Confidential. Much like ourselves, they are a voice for victims. They try to be a voice for the voiceless. And if you find yourself in a situation where you have been hurt through no fault of your own and you need help, you need somebody to speak on your behalf, whether it's against an insurance company, whether it's against an institution, it could be a medical malpractice case, it could be a wrongful death case, it could be something simple like a slip and fall. And you just need somebody who understands the law, who knows how to navigate what can seem like an uphill battle and an intimidating environment, like a bigger company, like an insurance company. If they're denying you payment, if they're giving you a hard time, if you've been in a car accident, call Zarzar Law. They will talk to you. They'll walk you through the process. They'll tell you what you need to do, what the next steps are. They'll help you evaluate your case. So we would just encourage you to give them a call at Zarzar Law. You can find it online, zarzarlaw.com. And of course, we appreciate their support here on Gulf Coast Confidential as well.
Yep. Something like this.
I know, because you might need somebody to help present. Good Lord, let's hope not. Well, moving on to our next case, as you know, just a few minutes ago, we talked about Conrad Roy. So again, this whole segment is really centered on just these teenage boys and how vulnerable they can be to suicide and manipulative pressure. And that's not to say that girls aren't as well. They certainly, most certainly are. But this is because we've had several high-profile cases involving teenage boys. This is what we're focusing on. So we wanted to revisit a case that we talked about before called Suicide by Text, the Conrad Roy case. And this is out of Massachusetts. Such a sad case, but fortunately, I feel like his parents and his family did get some justice because the judge in the trial against Michelle Carter, who was Conrad's girlfriend of sorts at the time, she was charged with involuntary manslaughter over his suicide. And in 2017, a judge found her guilty in part because he said that Roy had broken what they call the chain of self-causation towards suicide when he got out of the truck, but that she urged him to get right back in, and it was her quote-unquote wanton and reckless encouragement that caused his death. So that was another situation that we just wanted to mention. That was mostly by text, but again, it shows how technology can play a role, and it's all happening under the noses of these parents, and they don't realize what's going on,
Yeah, and how it's happening within the dynamics of the social interactions with young people and the way they do, because Michelle Carter, this is an unprecedented case where your words were your weapon and your effed up mind too, because she wanted attention too. They said she was class clown, most fun, or most likely to brighten your day. Can you imagine that? Most likely to brighten your day. Class clown made sure that this young boy, Conrad Roy, who had graduated, who had become a tugboat captain, who was going to college with a scholarship, who loved his mama and his two baby sisters, and she decides to slide in because he had the misfortune of being in Florida at the same time she was in Florida. So they had a little beach romance, I guess, and they lived not too far from each other up at their home state. But she wanted to pretend to be his girlfriend, and she wanted her friends, I guess, to give her empathy or sympathy or whatever, because the angst of my boyfriend's just feeling suicidal. Well, he was on Celexa, she was on Celexa. His mom said he just wanted to be a good person. She said he was a great person. 3.8 GPA, doing all these things I mentioned, takes his little sisters for ice cream. I mean, he's a good boy. And so he just had dreams, but she comes in. And I understand. Like I said, I don't have any kids, but if I saw a girl like that coming around my child, I'd be like, you have got to go back to wherever it is you go.
I would make her feel not welcome.
Yeah. Oh, it would just be, bye.
Right. Get out of the house.
Yeah.
Let me call your mama and tell her not to send you over here either.
And don't be on the phone. See, because
that's what I mean. Yeah, that's why it's like they're in this separate little world that you don't have access to when they're on their phone.
Right. And she really hadn't been there. The mother said the first time I saw her was at a baseball game and then at the wake there. And she was telling people and acting like the grieving widow. So this is some messed up thinking in your head. Just because you're effed up in the head, you don't get to kill my kid. I get mad about this stuff because I'm tired of everybody going, well, she was on Celexa too. And so I'm a pharmacist. I understand how medicine works. And if there's an issue with it somewhere along the way, hey, tell somebody. Let's talk about it. Let's titrate your dose. Let's change it, whatever. You don't just double down and go, I'm going to be on this. Good luck to the rest of you.
Right. Yeah, no, it's sick. But you're right. That's a sign of a mentally ill person as well. And I'm glad the court saw that.
Oh, yeah, I am too. And that bench trial that she got, the judge, like you said, he doubled down on her. And they tried to get it appealed and stuff, so it couldn't.
Well, and it reminds me of that show. I love me some Dick Wolf and Law and Order, but Criminal Intent was one of my favorite Law and Order series, and because that's really what it was about. It was proving, using the law, what somebody was intending to do, what they meant to do, who apparently thought they were more clever or could outthink or could be manipulative, and it was about, pinning them down. So in this case, I feel like they did get to the real culprit, which was her.
Right, they did with her. But see, and then as court cases go, a victim gets victimized over and over again. He had said at one point, I think I'm wired differently from everybody else. I just feel like a little particle on the face of this earth. I'm sure teenagers feel like that somewhat sometimes.
Well, I'm sure adults do too.
Sometimes he had some little bouts of hopelessness, and he had an attempted suicide, like with the overdose of acetaminophen or Tylenol before. So they have to drag that back up and everything. So it's just so sad. The first time we visited is even sadder the second time.
No kidding. Well, and that brings us to another case that we want to mention. This young man, 15-year-old Bryce Tate from West Virginia. This is very recent, but basically there's now an investigation into the possibility of an alleged sextortion scheme. So in this recent news release from Kanawha County Sheriff's Office, they're saying that the FBI field office in Pittsburgh is taking over this investigation into the death of Bryce Tate. He was a student at Nitro High School who died from a self-inflicted gunshot on November 6th. And since his death, investigators say he may have been targeted in an online sextortion scheme. They say they found evidence on his phone, according to the sheriff's office, that shows an unknown person contacted him about 3 hours before his death, and that the conversation continued until, quote unquote, just minutes before his death. So it looks as though this was another situation where he sent a picture that they manipulated. And if you're not familiar, again, authorities say sextortion is a form of online exploitation where victims are pressured or manipulated into sending sensitive or graphic images of themselves to someone. And that person oftentimes is pretending to be somebody that they're not. They're using a fake account. They're using photos to threaten the victim. And then these schemes move fast. They are designed, like we've been talking about, to completely overwhelm and panic young victims, authorities say. So, it's just so sad that there's such a spike in these cases because there's so many people that are out there just trying to make a quick buck, and they're preying on people's natural inclinations for connection.
Right. And to not be humiliated also. So, like you said, 24 days ago, and when I wrote up this story the first time, I wrote on there, I said, the Iron Bowl happened this past weekend. In the time it took us just to watch the Iron Bowl, there, less than 3 hours, that is from start to finish how long it took them to take Bryce Tate's life. Just like that.
I can't imagine.
Start with the chit chat, then get with a little bit of, I'm a 17-year-old girl, flirty. Here's my picture. Now send yours. The second that picture gets there, That's when it's on. The $500. They kill this boy for $500.
Unbelievable. And I know if I were his parents, I probably wouldn't even want to be able to stop myself from fighting them.
Right. In the basically the West Africa and the Southeast Asia countries are where this is so popular there. They have scripts online that they read, and they teach each other how to do this, because what they love to say is, well, it's a poor country, that's what they do. Like when people say, oh, they just got to sell drugs, because, I mean, what else can they do? Type of thing. So basically they try to use gift cards, the Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, and cash.
So they'll give them the money and get what they want and keep it moving. They don't really care about the collateral damage, and that often includes these kids being vulnerable and ending their own lives. And it reminds me of one of the last cases that we're going to mention to you, Jordan DeMay. Two brothers from Nigeria are charged with basically targeting this 17-year-old in a sextortion scam. So they got 17 years and 6 months in jail in the U.S. So that's fantastic. This is the Ogoshi brothers that we're talking about from Lagos. And police say they lured Jordan DeMay into sending them explicit images by pretending to be a girl his own age, and then they blackmailed him, just like what we've been talking about. And this, God almighty, he killed himself in less than 6 hours after they started talking on Instagram. Now, what makes this significant is this is actually the first successful prosecution of Nigerians for sextortion in the United States. And like Pam was saying, this is a rapidly growing cybercrime, often linked to Nigeria, often linked to Southeast Asia. I've actually done a story with a friend of mine who used to be an investigator for Homeland Security, and he now works for a private security firm, if you will, and they're international. And he said that in Africa, like places like Nigeria, also in Southeast Asia, you've got poverty, of course. Poverty's everywhere, but you have people that are looking to make a quick buck, and they see Americans as fat pigs, basically, to be poked and bled. And if they can do that by accessing the insecurity of a teenage boy or any teenager, they absolutely will do that. They're going to go for the least among us and the most vulnerable and stick them like pigs and bleed them.
Oh my gosh, naive. They asked for $1,000. He gave them $300, and they kept asking for more. And he finally just said, y'all are gonna make me want, or y'all gonna make me kill myself. And they're like, good, be done with it, or else I'll help you do it. That is what we're dealing with. I mean,
just a schoolboy.
Yeah. And see, I picture in my head, and I may be wrong, I picture in my head, they're in their room upstairs, and they're panicking and stuff, and parents are downstairs, and they're like, I need to tell my parents, but I can't, I'm embarrassed, or,
It's not worth dying over.
No, tell them. Let's talk and talk and talk and talk. Because first thing, shut that computer or phone off, block them, get rid of them. But if they sent you something, save the messages there. But
for evidence,
right. And it's never your fault, and you are not alone. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to get in their head on loop.
Absolutely. I know, because I think that's why some of these parents are speaking up now, including John DeMay's parents. And this is in Michigan, but, his dad, when the guys were getting sentenced, the Ogoshi brothers, he's like, he still has nightmares about finding his son dead in the bedroom. And he said they ended up having to move because it was just too hard to live with the memory of what happened there.
And the mama said, I keep his room closed and keep the curtains there. She said, because I can smell the sweat, the dirt, and the cologne.
Bless her heart. Well, I think a lot of what is at the root of this is con people, for one, and they're always going to find a way to con, and the internet has given them new access to new victims, widespread all over the world. The other part that we're seeing now is the element of AI. So if they can't manipulate you into sending your own picture, if you will, that is potentially that they can extort you with, then they'll make one up, just like we saw with poor Elijah. But it's bigger than that. It's not even just about these young men that are getting targeted. These AI-generated apps like Undress Me make it easy for other boys, if you will, to want to undress girls in their own schools or girls that are around them that they know. Maybe they think it's just for their own personal quote-unquote spank bank, as local police talked about a young man here in a case that we had, 17, turned 18, but he used the app Undress Me, according to Pensacola police. They said they didn't have, and he undressed like dozens of girls online. He used other people's naked body parts, but he put them on existing pictures of these young women, and they were outraged, they were embarrassed, they were hurt, they felt violated. And this happened right here in Pensacola, and the police said that they didn't have the laws to charge them. So Florida ended up this past year passing another law based on this Pensacola case that allowed them to be able to prosecute somebody who uses the app to undress someone for their own personal use, if you will. And they said that they didn't have that before. There are some attorneys here locally who believe that that law was in place for them to charge this young man, and that there might have been a little bit of nepotism because he was well connected to a political family in town. William Stafford is this young man's name. But he never was charged for that, so that's why they passed this law. What was so horrible to me about that whole situation, the reason people even knew that these pictures existed is because his ex-girlfriend sent a video that she made of the pictures on his phone. She made a little video of the pictures that she saw on his phone that he had manipulated, that he had made, that he had uploaded, taken these pictures from their social media accounts, uploaded them to this Undress Me app, undressed them, and then downloaded them back onto his phone. She made a little video of that, and she sent it to some of these alleged victims. She ends up getting charged, but not him. And it's outrageous to many of these young women and teenage girls that I did speak to about this case. And we're seeing it happen now in classrooms across the country. And like a lot of other communities like Florida are saying, well, we just don't have the laws to deal with it. And I call bullshit on that. I think they find a way to punish with their zero tolerance in other situations. Why is this being tolerated? Well, I say all that to say this too. In Louisiana recently, a 13-year-old student was expelled from her middle school after she had a male classmate who she said created and shared that deep fake pornography image of her. And this is according to her family's lawyers. They now plan to file a federal lawsuit against the school district there, LaFourche Parish School District. It occurred at the 6th Ward Middle School in August when the school year began. And the girl's father, Joseph Daniels, and the attorneys that they've hired say that she endured bullying after this deep fake nude was circulated. It was too much for her. They continued to laugh. They continued to tease of her, and she ends up smacking this kid, and then they want to punish her, but not him. So I think there's just this deep-seated feeling of unfairness.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, what's she supposed to do? They were 6 or 7 of them on the bus giggling about it and laughing and showing it, and she pushed back. I mean, I get upset with this because this is the same thing that happened here. You know, they're the first offender. They're the ones doing things wrong. What's she supposed to do? Sit there and go, oh, this is great. Do this again. A little slap from her, which she shouldn't have done it. Even her own daddy said she shouldn't have done it.
Of course.
But I mean, she's a girl. She's 13 or 8th grade or whatever. You know, she's just a little girl in Louisiana. But you know what? Louisiana ain't having this BS over there. They're one of the first states over there to go, you know what? We're going to fix this because this is not right. And isn't that something? You know, they're the ones that are going to do that. But, you know, they tried to expel her for 45 days and everybody was going, that's just a bit much. Suspend her if you need to or whatever. But the thing is, it almost teaches women, don't protect yourself. What the old boys do, you just got to accept it because you might get in trouble. Well, you know what? You know, sometimes there's good trouble, you know, that you can get into, and pushing back for yourself may be one of them. Because what happened, the girl went to the principal too. And the principal goes, oh, whatever, we're going to handle it. She's like, I want to call my daddy. He would not let her.
That's wrong.
Yeah. So that right there is going to get you a good old lawsuit because you can't do that. If somebody's asking for their daddy and you're in there trying to charge them or suspend them or whatever, they get to talk to their father because he said, we're not getting parents involved at this point. So, I mean, this is some dum-dums that are in the school thing. But
we've seen that before in school districts closer to home as well.
We have. So, I mean, with that, I mean, what are people walking around? They don't even have regular garden variety sense to know, well, let the little girl call her daddy. That is pretty horrible. But and I'm trying to put myself, if it's a man principal, you can't be that out of touch that you don't understand a little girl, 13-year-old girl wants her daddy when that happened.
Of course,
you know,
she is.
I'm 66 and I want my daddy if that happened because you ain't going to mess with me without my daddy being in the mix.
Right.
You know? So that's how most little girls are. But basically, I think they eased off of that basically the expulsion or what have you.
Good. Well, good. I'm glad some awareness made that happen. But yeah, so we just wanted to talk a little bit about these cases today. It is incredibly sad, but the dangers are incredibly real. So we did want to highlight these recent headline-making cases that are bringing some of these issues to light. And again, if you know someone or if you struggle with thoughts of suicide, please reach out. There's someone available 24/7, and the national hotline number is 988. And we appreciate you listening in on this episode today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just tell, talk. Nothing's ever your fault.
Yes, I know. My daughter's 14. We talk about the dangers of being online. I keep a close eye on her phone. But again, we can only do so much. And technology, is not my forte. So it probably wouldn't be hard to circumvent your parents, if you will. But just keep that communication line open. Let them know how much they're loved. If they do make mistakes, it's not worth ending your life over.
Right.
Awesome.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, that is it for Suicide Under Threat, Who's Killing Teenage Boys Online. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher, Pam Hill. And a big thanks, as always, to our director, editor, and production engineer, James Roy. Remember, you can listen to more of our Gulf Coast Confidential conversations wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And you can also watch on the Gulf Coast Confidential YouTube channel. Just don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time, y'all. This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law.